Hello, everyone. My name is Bridget LeCompte, and I'm the consultant for occupational therapy to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Today, I have Carrie Morgan with me. We will be interviewing her regarding her experiences with virtual related services. So thank you, Carrie, for being here today and your willingness to share your experiences.
You're welcome.
And then, Carrie, if you would like to just introduce yourself and share a little bit about you, that would be fabulous.
Okay, well, this is my 18th year as an occupational therapist. I graduated undergrad from the University of North Carolina, and I got my master's from Boston University. This is my 13th year with Cabarrus County Schools, and 9th or 10th as the lead, but this is my first year having to deal with telehealth.
Wonderful. So to get us started, what were your initial thoughts and concerns when you first learned about virtual related services during COVID-19?
My initial thought was we have no plan. We are completely blindsided, and this was not on our radar. We had no idea what this was supposed to look like. Were we supposed to provide live services or just, supports online? There were just so many questions. We wondered, what are the teachers going to do? In Cabarrus County, we provide almost exclusively integrated services, and how's that going to work, during this time? And will there be consistency throughout the district? That's always a question. Will we be using a synchronous platform? Will everybody be using the same asynchronous platforms? What are going to be the expectations for their EC staff? Are there going to be changes to frequency and duration? We had so many questions.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, at least myself too, were just kind of in a state of shock. It's just, what? We're expected to do this? How? And then, after that initial shock, then we started asking those questions. And then we started coming up with a plan and kind of figuring out that maybe we could actually make this happen. Somehow we could make it happen. So in kind of working through all of this, how did planning with your administration and others in your LEA go?
Well, I kind of thought about this in a couple of different ways, from the district level, down to the OT department level. So as far as Cabarrus County Schools, our related service coordinator was really our go-to person for planning and questions. She was working at the district level to help make some of those decisions and to advocate for our department. She would take our suggestions and our experiences to all of her different committees. So even though we didn't have maybe direct input at the county level, we were able to work through her, to get our needs heard at least. In the actual EC department, we each try to participate more in our individual schools' professional learning community meetings. Most of those meetings went to a weekly basis in order to get information out from the EC department. Also, members from the EC department, like our coordinators and our coaches in Cabarrus County Schools, they were more frequently in attendance at those virtual PLC meetings. But unfortunately, the information provided through the EC department sometimes got interpreted differently by different schools. So, that there's some hiccups there. At the individual school level, each school tended to be different in their planning. And that made planning for the OTs a little trickier and difficult too. So we had to be super organized. We had to keep information about each school straight. Cabarrus County made the determination that we would be using Microsoft Teams as our live synchronous platform. But that's kind of where the consistency stopped. But at least we had that. Some schools decided they weren't going to provide any synchronous instruction. Others provided virtual learning on Teams while also providing supplemental materials on an asynchronous platform. And then others provided synchronous only. So we really had to plan with each school individually to to determine what they were going to do and then what in turn we would be able to do. And then in talking with teachers and planning with individual teachers, the teachers could use any asynchronous platform that they wanted. So we had to learn how to use all the platforms like Canvas, Seesaw, Google Classrooms, everything else. I have to say that most EC teachers were very willing to give us like a teacher level access so that we were able to post materials or comment on submissions. So the teachers were awesome to work with for the most part. And then as far as planning within our actual, just our OT department, we have 15 occupational therapists on staff. So we went to weekly virtual meetings. Normally we met monthly, but we really wanted to up that just so we could share our successes, so we could talk out our questions, so we could all come in one place and come up with questions to take to our related services coordinator so that she could take it up the chain. We came together just to brainstorm a lot. We created a Google Drive to share materials. We had shared materials for years, but a lot of them were all over the place. There were hard copies in the office that we couldn't get to. We had a OneDrive, but that was a mess. So we just tried to consolidate things and plan that way so that we weren't having to reinvent the wheel every time we needed something to post. And we hope to continue to expand on that in the future.
Great. So you really highlight the importance of teamwork and collaboration. You could not have moved forward by yourself, and you really needed the whole team, and it needed to come from obviously the state level, but also the district, the school, the individual level, the OT department. And so we all really needed to work together and figuring out how to move forward. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And now for you, what did you do to prepare for virtual related services as a practitioner? And what resources did you use? And just kind of take us through your thought process and your reasoning and some of the things that you considered at the forefront.
Well, especially during the first 2 weeks that the students were out of school and we were at home, we weren't required to provide specially designed instruction. I think everybody was trying to get their feet under them and decide what to do. So I did a lot of research during that time, just really kind of poured over AOTA documents on telehealth, tried to understand what the North Carolina board stance was on telehealth, read interviews and blogs that had been posted by telehealth practitioners, tried to get some of their knowledge of what they've been doing for years, listened to podcasts about telehealth and about specific synchronous platforms and how to use those. Took continuing ed trainings, watched videos on how to access platforms. I Googled a lot. Just, things from how to share documents from one asynchronous platform to another, so you're not having to do that over and over. And one of the most important things that we did as a department and then also individually is just created all kinds of tracking forms, just how to track every single meeting that we were going to have online, things that we would need to print when we got back to the office, so we wouldn't be out of compliance on that, how to calculate service time, what each individual student's platforms would be, and scheduled treatment times. We had tracking charts all over the place. And then we just tried to grab as many resources from the office as we could when we realized that we wouldn't be coming back. So just, whiteboards, handwriting without tears workbook, anything that we thought that we might be able to use, we tried to grab. So that's really what happened those first 2 weeks as we were trying to start planning for SDI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of reading and listening and exploring and researching.
Yes.
For that. And then I guess, so once you kind of started getting your plan together, how did you start to prepare for the actual sessions and kind of more of the logistic pieces of it? You kind of touch a little bit more on the tracking forms and how you would get consent and that kind of thing. But if you could share that a little further as well.
Right. That was just really a lot of communication and planning with our EC teachers. So much more than normal. A lot of times we had a general idea of what we'd be going into during a session, but now we had to know exactly what was going to happen. So we really got to know each other. We'd have planning sessions like this outside of just treatment. So we would have to set up those planning times. We'd have to plan those sessions in order so we could get our materials ready. So if we needed certain handwriting out tiers pages, or if we needed to create a video to be able to post online, we really worked on sharing materials within our department. And the district tried to keep the case manager as the point person, just so the families weren't getting phone calls and emails, from a teacher, a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist. So we tried to keep the case manager as the point person. So they were in charge of filling out any type of service agreements And sometimes those had related service also on them. Sometimes they didn't. So we made sure that we kept our own separate documentation and also within in our notes as far as what we had agreed upon. So the first week was really a lot of trial and error. We tried to run our schedule as much as possible and see what worked and what didn't and regroup and make changes. But just each week through the process kept getting a little bit easier and a little bit more manageable.
Great. So now looking at the sessions, what did your sessions and your supports actually look like in practice?
I can talk about my personal experience. Live sessions went a couple of different ways. And like I said, we use Microsoft Teams. So from my perspective, the team, including the student and sometimes the parent, the EC teacher, and me, and sometimes also a CODA, we would join at our assigned time through a calendar invite, and the teacher would present the lesson. She's in charge of, of providing the instruction, and then we would jump in to provide our expertise. So whether that was sharing our screen to be able to model letter formation or to put a writing checklist like up on the screen. We did a lot of that sharing of screens, which was very interesting, especially since a lot of handwriting, which a lot of our students have handwriting goals, a lot of handwriting had kind of been taken out during this time. So, just getting the student even to be able to find a piece of paper and a pencil sometimes was a challenge. But we used a variety of tools, like I said, our whiteboards, modified paper, posting handouts, using Handwriting Without Tears digital tools. It was really kind of nice to have the whole team on there and with the parent to be able to see what does integrated service look like. So that those sessions were really nice. I also had another type of live session where I had teachers, especially teachers from my centralized programs, they would go live with their whole class to do like a morning meeting, and some teachers did it every day. Some would do it 2 or 3 times a week, but they would invite the whole class, at specified times and have a morning meeting. And so it was just nice to be able to be on those also, to say, hey, to meet the parents, to be able to ask them directly, what do you need right now? What can I, email you or post on the teacher's site that's going to help you and your student? Do you need a social story about why we're out of school? Do you need some visual supports? Do you need some sensory ideas? What can I give to you? So that was nice just to have that direct interaction. And a lot of those students were students that I just have on as supplemental aids and services. So I was able to provide that, more directly than I normally would. And then one of my teachers was super awesome. She even put in her Google Slides, every morning meeting there was an OT corner. So we would add something every week, whether it was like review of zones of regulation, and we would go through, a different color every day, or reading a social story about hand washing, something like that. So those were kind of typically my 2 different kinds of live sessions that we had. But then we also did a lot of asynchronous things where we would post materials like letter formation charts, how to do heavy work in your home environment, writing checklists, social stories, visual supports. We would also, especially on a platform like Seesaw, we would be able to comment on submitted assignments that the teacher would do, and then the student would complete it, and we were at least able to comment on it. Now, would they revise it? Not necessarily, but at least we were able to give some feedback that way. And then we were also able to revise teacher assignments with their permission, to include a written portion to assignments. So those were some ways that we were able to do asynchronous.
Wonderful. I love that example of just really providing contextual and collaborative services and embedding your interventions as much as you can, like as you would during normal school times. So it's really cool that you've been able to do that and really demonstrate how that works. And, I think one of the biggest challenges has been walking that fine line between educational model or clinical model, and like, how does that fit with this new context, and how do we still maintain that collaboration? So it's really exciting to hear that you've still been able to do some really phenomenal things, regardless, and we've just switched settings and doing it in a different way. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that was one of the things we wanted. We provide integrated service in our county, and we're really proud of that. So we just wanted to know, like, how are we going to be able to do this in a virtual platform so that the families can actually see, what does this look like, so that now they know what it looks like and they know what it looks like in school.
Yep, exactly. And it's just demonstrating the value of OT even further, which is wonderful. So I appreciate that you've been able to do that. So what were the main challenges of virtual related service provision?
Mine personally, my number one challenge was also having my family in the house. Many of us are also trying to educate our own children, and so and while we're juggling service delivery, so my own personal experience was not ideal. So as soon as I would have my schedule of my students, and as soon as I would jump off a session with a student, then I would have to run to my own child and try to get a lesson finished before I had to jump onto another session. But because every day was different, I wasn't able to create a consistent schedule for my own child. So, that was just kind of a detriment, in my own personal family. So that's just my own personal experience. But I feel as a district, the live platform that we had to use was not ideal. It is getting better as they're making changes, but there's a limit to the number of people you can see on the screen. There's you could try to pin somebody, but as soon as somebody shared their screen, then you lost a visual on the student. So there were a lot of platform challenges that we had to learn to work around. And for that same reason, when we were trying to do CODA supervision, that was kind of hard because we didn't want, as an OT, we weren't really involved in the session, but we had to be there to observe and make comments, but we would try to say hi and then turn off our microphone, turn off our video, try to not take up space on the screen. So that was a little bit of a challenge. The multiple asynchronous platforms, that was definitely a challenge because teachers were using one, whether it's Canvas or Google Classrooms or Seesaw, et cetera, and they were able to master that. But because we had so many schools, so many teachers, it was hard to get a handle on all those different platforms, but we did the best we could. Another thing was that schools interpreting information from the district level differently. It was stressful when you were in different school PLC meetings and hearing different interpretations, but we're not really the person to be, telling anybody what to do. So it would just, if there was any way that the information could get trickled down in a different manner, I don't know what that would be, but it would be great if everybody heard the same thing. And then it was difficult to access a student's progress and provide meaningful suggestions when you couldn't see the student in the process of writing or cutting or coloring. You could try to get the parent to angle the cameras down, but oftentimes, it just didn't work. But we would try to pin the student where they were the only person on the screen, and sometimes it worked, but many times it's different. And if you did get a student to write, and then you would ask them to hold up their writing, sometimes it was really hard to get it right in the camera view. So that was another. There were good laughs. There were a lot of good laughs around that. But the last main thing was just some students not having access, not having the technology or not having the devices, not having internet access, not having a parent at home willing to help them, and then also language barriers. So those were just some of the, it's quite a long list, but those were the big things that stuck out about this.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to juggle with transitioning into this new style of service, but it's not only that, it's also like your own, like you said, your own home environment. That's your work environment, and trying to juggle that as well, and then trying to maintain the same processes that we've had in school, but then switching it to this virtual world is really challenging. Now, so what would you say the benefits are? I know that there are a lot of challenges, but it sounds like you guys have really flourished in this new world. So what are some of the benefits that you've seen for virtual related services?
The main thing that comes to my mind is just meeting families. A lot of times we meet them once a year at an IEP meeting, and just, getting to know them and them getting to know us and understanding who we are and what we do and what our mission is. That's been the best thing from my experience. Families were able to see what the students' struggles were, and understand those barriers and why we make certain suggestions and certain ideas. So I think the families learning how to support their students and provide those strategies on a consistent basis is going to be huge. I think students are going to make progress, and hopefully we're not going to have too much of a decline, but just getting that closer relationship with the families has been fantastic. And then another benefit is that our department, I think we really did. I think we grew. I think we flourished. I think, we've started planning. Now, at least we have an idea. If this ever happens again, we have a better plan. We have some things, under our belt. So I think that's also a benefit.
Great. Yeah, it's been great to see the interactions with families and figure out ways that we can provide some carryover and help provide them with some support too, because, we provide those supports to the students in the school setting, but a lot of times the parents need just as much support in the home and they may not have that. So it's really cool to kind of bridge that gap between the families and the schools and then the practitioners as well. And it's cool to see how you guys have really worked through everything, and you've learned a lot. It sounds like, and it's a really great way just to show again the value of OT and how we can be innovative and how we can respond to times of crisis. Did you learn what lessons did you learn overall, or do you have any tips that you want to share with us, and any do's or don'ts moving forward?
Oh, I would definitely love to hear tips from everybody else, because anything we could glean off of anybody else, if we talk to people from other districts, it was so great. Even the videos that you posted of spotlights on different people, like that helps so much, at least to give us ideas of what can we do? How can we provide this? How can we make this better? But our number one thing is just to plan ahead, just because we didn't know this would ever happen. So there was no planning. So just at least now we have planned. We have started, to make clearinghouses of materials and that sort of thing. We have, some idea of what service would look like. So, we would really like to find out what our district's going to mandate. So we want to continue to try to make a clearinghouse of materials so that we can use whatever platforms is determined. We would also say, do ask questions and advocate for yourself. Mm-hmm. Just from our weekly OT meetings, we would let our related service coordinator know what was working and what was not. So, whether it made a difference at the district level, at least we know we were being heard and we had someone to go to who would advocate for us. It's also do have open and honest communication with your teachers and families. There were some, especially in the beginning, some hard conversations with families who are resistant or didn't understand, but by the end of this process, they could see, the benefit of what we were doing, and they had bought into it. And so that was, just being open and honest with them made all the difference. And I would say, do ask for training on platforms and online resources. Just ask for it. See what happens. See if your district's able to give you any additional training on that, and do advocate for additional training for the students and the families, because especially the first week when specially designed instruction was re-implemented, families just had a hard time being able to log in, to be able to get onto the platforms. So maybe more video trainings or modeling for the parents, but then also I don't think it'd be a bad idea if while the students are in school, even being able to model for them in the classroom this, if we have to go back home, this is how you get to where you need to go. So those are my big do's, and the don'ts. Don't be rigid, be able to be flexible to an extent, and don't expect everything to go perfectly, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Great. I really appreciate that you bring up the importance of advocacy, and not only for our students, but also for ourselves and our profession, because that in itself will support our students and our family as well. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, as well as the flexibility. And, this has been the greatest time to learn flexibility, but, still staying strong and, who we are as practitioners and the role that we play and the supports that we provide. And obviously we still have to maintain, our standards, our ethical standards, and adhere to our licensure standards and all those kinds of things. But we do need to be flexible and figure out ways that we can move forward in these times, and think a little bit more outside the box. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about your experiences or anything?
Honestly, like you just said, just like remember that you're an occupational therapist and that we're adaptable, if nothing else. That's we know how to think outside the box. So just after all the initial panic and frazzle, just remember that we're an OT and that we can do this, and we're here for the students. That's the most important thing. It's not about us, it's about them, and we're going to do what's best for our students.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your insight and sharing your experiences. I really hope this will be helpful for others in the field. I know it was helpful for me as well. So thank you so much for your time. Bye, everybody.